mission statement, having a good vision statement, having good core values will make it so that having key performance indicators is actually a possibility. How do we determine whether or not the person that we've put into a role is actually doing the thing that we need to? How do we get past the, oh, they're a really nice person, so I'll give them the benefit of the doubt? If we don't know how to answer these questions, chances are that the very things that we're working so hard to build constantly are actually going to collapse in on themselves. Mr. Brandon Dawson from Cardone Ventures gave a phenomenal chat about, and all of his team, frankly, a phenomenal talk about how important it is to hold people at certain standards so that we, as the forgers, the point of the spear, don't get dulled and don't get weighed down by negativity or by a lack of performance. Now, in my teams, in Franklin Dental Care and Dentures, Bright Smiles Community Outreach Coalition, Tarabify, ZDT Entertainment, I do try to go into things with a sense of compassion. And I want to preface all the things that I'm going to say right now with, listen, when it comes down to it, we're dealing with human beings and they have lives, they have interests, they have things that they want to get accomplished. It is our first and foremost responsibility as leaders to incorporate those things into the things that we are asking them to do, and also the level at which we hold them accountable. So when it comes to assessing whether or not someone is doing the job, the first question is, have we thought genuinely and deeply about how that particular role contributes to the overall organism? How that specific thing that they're doing is integrated into everything. Chances are, if you're watching this video, you have not necessarily spent the time to think through, to write through step by step what a person is to do in order to accomplish the best possible outcomes of their role. That would be the first step. If you haven't gone through that exercise of creating a job description that has all the accurate objectives, has all the accurate competencies, has all the accurate education and experience required, and also all of the emotions that go into the about us statement, basically the summary of the position. If we haven't gone through, and minimally gone through, to just write that stuff out, well, that's a really, really good part to start on. Because as we grow as leaders and as we grow as an organization, a lot of that stuff is going to become more and more specified, and having a rough draft for it, something to at least put out, is a really necessary part of actually having something to build on, something substantial that will actually hold people accountable. The next step after that is creating key performance indicators for the organization. So having a pretty good mission statement, having a good vision statement, having good core values will make it so that having key performance indicators is actually a possibility. If we don't have a mission, if it's amorphous, if it's not something specific and packed with emotion, there's a good chance that we're going to end up measuring things that actually aren't all that relevant for anything, right? We need to really have a strong idea of where we want to go, otherwise we don't really know how to measure it. So writing out these things, spending the time and energy, having those conversations with other people that have created larger companies, things that we want to do, and making sure to revisit these things consistently so that they're updated, are essential components of making sure that the system itself and us as leaders are honest with not only ourselves, but also with those people doing the tasks. Now, the other step of this, after all of that, which takes a significant amount of time, of dedicated thought and actual implementation, is actually going through the process of hiring people to doing these jobs. When it comes down to hiring, my philosophy is pretty straightforward. I'm going to always set the bar fairly high to even get people into the interview process. So if someone hasn't read the job description through, that's a red flag. If someone hasn't spent the time to actually book a call and then show up in an organized fashion at the time that they book, that's a red flag. If someone comes in, if they make it through that process, and I call their references, and their references are telling me things that are a little bit off-putting in terms of their character, in terms of how they conduct themselves, and they likely won't, that's a red flag. Now, say they passed all of that, and initially, we get them into our workplace, we get them into our environment, and they seem pretty decent, right? How do we gauge whether or not they're excellent or not? How do we gauge if they're going to be able to satisfy the job as it is currently at a good or an average level, but also that they have the ability to grow from there and actually move to the higher echelons that we need them in? Well, red flags that I always watch out for, because the core values of most of the companies that I've started so far consist of transparency, consistency, execution, abundance, and service. So I'm looking for people specifically that are very transparent and that don't spend time lying about the things that they're doing. It's hard enough trying to get someone trained up to a level where they're actually useful, especially in a highly specialized field like dentistry. But furthermore, to have them belittling or talking poorly about people that have already been there for longer than them and pointing fingers where clearly it's their fault, that is a red flag, and that is where I need to step in as a manager, have that conversation one time, and then if I see it again, to have the mental reserve and also the confidence that I need to get rid of that person and replace them with someone else that can actually do the job. So those are kind of emotional things that are important to understand. And I'll contextualize this by what Brandon Dawson said during his 10X 360 event that I went to. Out of 10 people, 2 of the people will be people that are actually contributing to pulling the load. 2 people out of 10 are going to be substantially invested and are going to be moving things forward. 6 out of those people, so 6 out of those people will be stabilizers, essentially people that are in the program, in the system, doing the work at an average rate and not especially inspired to do the work that moves something forward. 2 out of those 10 people are also going to be the ones that are actually spending resources to make it harder to get to the goal. So they might be talking shit in the coffee room. They might be dragging their feet. They might be doing the least amount of work that's required to look like they're doing their job. Those people, just by virtue of who they are and how they look at things, will necessarily be spending too much time and energy and really just subconsciously changing the culture of a place. Now, I say this to you because we need to be vigilant of these people, and we need to get them out of our work environment as quickly as possible so that we can keep on forging ahead, and so that we can keep those 6 people that are right in the middle at least more likely to get to a place where they might join those 2 people that are actually doing all the really hard work. So how do we get them out? How do we get to a point where enough is enough? This is a personal decision for a lot of people, and a lot of people that are actually quite poor at removing those people from organizations tend to be using the framework of, oh, I feel bad for that person, or oh, they've been going through this thing, or oh, it's just their personality, whatever it is. Oh, maybe I'm not being a good enough leader and not nurturing them. The reality is there are 8 billion people on this planet, my friend. There are tremendous amounts of potential and talent available to us. It's just a matter of seeing the world in an abundant fashion. It's a matter of making sure that we are actually being honest with ourselves when it comes to the amount of work that we put in, the amount of work that we expect out of ourselves, and the amount of work that we expect out of our greatest workers. If we can't put our foot down and say enough is enough, well, we're probably not going to get very far. And it's a hard pill to swallow. It's one that I've had to swallow many times. But I've also had the mentorship of someone that's been in the business for a long time and has seen when people are not performing at their level to say, hey, to Rob, it's time to get rid of this person. It's your job to do this. How do those conversations usually go for me? It's quite straightforward. Listen, we've tried it out. It's not working for XYZ reason, factual reasons. And I wish you the best of luck, and thank you so much for all of the time that you've invested. Really appreciate you. And that's really all the conversation needs to be. And we don't need to lollygag. We don't need to hear their life story. We don't need to really get into the weeds of the situation, right? It's a yes or no, and if it's a no, it's gone. The other thing is, when it comes down to having those conversations, I make sure that in the hiring process, I'm actually making abundantly clear that the first week is a working interview. You will get paid for the work that you do, but we are allowed to remove you at any point for any reason in that week if we don't see you're a fit. Furthermore, there's a 90-day period where we're still assessing your skills. So after that week, we'll put you into our software for payment. We'll put you into all the systems that you need to sign in, whatever. But in that 90-day period, again, if your performance drops or if you lack what we're looking for, if we're not a good cultural fit for you, then we can also remove you. Now, the problem often is that the longer that we hold on to people that aren't performing at that level, the more baggage kind of comes on us. The thing that I usually just say to people is, if you wake up thinking about someone in your organization in a negative light, there's a very good chance that you need to get rid of them immediately. Rip the Band-Aid off, get rid of it now, because at the end of the day, you should not be thinking about the people in your organization in a negative way. You should be thinking about how to move the entire thing forward. Hopefully this finds you well. It's a hard message to get across to a lot of people, but the reality is, my friend, there's a lot of people on this planet. There are good people on this planet.